Hi friends, we at GLC would like to take a quick moment to thank you for watching our programs on this platform, and we'd like to ask you for a little favor. Would you please go beneath this video and click the subscribe button? Did you know that by simply subscribing to the GLC YouTube channel, you can help us financially support the programs on this platform? You'll need to be signed into YouTube beforehand, but if not, simply click the subscribe button and YouTube will automatically walk you through the steps to sign in or to create an account. By taking these simple steps, you will not only ensure that you continue to receive our unique programming and gain instant access to the hundreds of videos we post, but more importantly, you'll also be telling YouTube that GLC's content is worth watching and promoting. Likewise, if you enjoyed a specific program, please click the thumbs up button below, which also helps inform YouTube that this is a program worth recommending. Finally, once you have logged in and subscribed, please click the notification bell below in order to receive announcements when we post new content. As usual, feel free to post your questions and comments in the comments section below. We always love hearing from our friends and viewers. Again, thank you for watching and supporting God's Learning Channel. We couldn't spread the message of the gospel without you. Be blessed, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Shalom, shalom, and welcome back to Famous Studio B. Maybe some of you have always asked, why do they always say shalom? Why do they say shalom when they start? Why do they say shalom when they end? I hope many of you understand that word in Hebrew, even though we translate it many times as peace and so forth, is really just our way of saying to you that may you be whole and may you be complete. Shalom, that's what that word means in Hebrew, is for something to be complete and to be wholeness. So we are wishing you, when we say Shalom Aleichem, we're wishing you wholeness and peace unto you. May you be complete in everything that you do. And I really mean that from all my heart when I begin the program and when I end the program as well, that you have much completeness and wholeness in your life, because that's what the Father actually wants to do with us. He wants us to make us complete in Him. That is what we're supposed to be actually about the business of doing, according to Ephesians chapter 4. My responsibility, or those responsible for that, that fivefold ministry in Ephesians chapter 4, is to equip the saints, to make all of us complete in Him as we all work together to be the fullness of the measure of the stature of the Messiah is the purpose of all that. And so that's the reason why I say this, is not just to be throwing out some Hebrew word and so forth. I really do mean that you be whole and you be complete in everything that you say and everything that you do in your life. And all that I want to do as one of the teachers on this program is to provide another dot in your life. In other words, my purpose is not to exchange my puzzle with your puzzle. I'm not here to say to you that, well, my puzzle's right and your puzzle's wrong, and so here's the right puzzle. I'm actually just here to add another piece to your puzzle. Remember when you were little kids, you used to do those little things where you connect the dots. I'm just here maybe to add something in your life, but perhaps through this beautiful language that can just connect another dot, especially if you've had a puzzle, for example, that you've been trying to put together for years, and you've got 4 or 5 pieces left over, and you just can't figure out where they go, and finally somebody shows you where that piece goes, and then after that, then it's pretty easy to see how the other 3 or 4 pieces go in the puzzle. And that's really all I want to do, is to help us to complete this puzzle, if you will. Now, last time we were talking about words that have a gimel and a lamed in it. We were talking about the word translated erroneously, I believe, as paths of righteousness and ponder the paths of your feet and words like that. And that actually in Hebrew that word is to make a cycle, is what it means. And not only to make it a cycle, but there's a nuance to the word also that means to do it consistently and to do it often enough that you actually wear a little groove. Sometimes maybe we would call it a rut or something like that. To wear a little groove in the ground. And later on we'll actually draw that for you as we get into what I believe Ezekiel's wheel is all about. But my contention is that all words, Hebrew words in your Bible that have these 2 letters in them will have something to do with the full meaning of the word. Now, we've talked about this a little bit before in the past as well, because we do the same thing in English. The same thing is true in English, where part of the word, where we have a group of words that all contain the same prefix or the same suffix. And so that means no matter what the rest of the word is, it will still have something to do with those letters that they all share. So this is just not some Hebrew thing. This is how languages work. So there's nothing really weird about it. And I've used, in the past, I've used the example of telegraph, telephone, television, teleprompter, things like that. Something Obama can't do without, but that's another story. Anyway, now what do all those words have in common? Tele, T-E-L-E. Now, tele has a meaning. Tele means to cast forth something, and so forth. But you don't see tele written by itself. You don't see the word tele written by itself. But it takes the rest of the word to give it its full meaning. But yet every word that starts with that T-E-L-E will have something to do with that. Paragraph, parable, parallel, trooper, and so forth, all have the same kind of thing. They all start with a para. And so that means that they all have a similar meaning when they start with those words. So I'm doing the same thing here. And only we're using the Gimel and Lamed, which, if you remember last time, means to roll something over, or if you will, to lead something with your foot. Now what I want to do now is I want to give you some examples of words. I'm going to give you maybe 10 or 12, I'm not exactly sure how many I have there, that have the Gimel and the Lamed in it. And so that means they will all, in their various uses, have something to do with exposing or revealing or rolling and things like that. And so they'll all be very similar. And so even if you add other letters and so forth to them, they'll all have something to do with that. And that's why, for instance, when I do tours in Israel, part of the thing that I do is when we go from town to town, I'm always taking the names of the towns as we drive through them and showing them what they mean in ancient Hebrew. Not even necessarily what they mean in modern Hebrew. Modern Hebrew is not ancient Hebrew. That's not the same kind of thing. There's a whole lot of borrowed words and so forth from other languages in modern Hebrew, and a little mixing and combination and so forth. But I'm talking about ancient Hebrew, Moses, thousands of years ago. And I talk about the names of these towns and why they were named these ways. And so, for example, when we go to Galilee or Gilgal or Golan Heights or some places like that, or Gilead and so forth, I'll bring out these words and their meaning because they have something to do with that. Now, Travis, go ahead and bring up on the screen. I want to give you an example of about 10 or 12 words here. The first one is one of the roots. It's gal, and it's translated on the right. On the left, I'm going to give you the Hebrew word, and on the right is the word, the way it's translated primarily, not in every single case, but the way it's primarily translated in your Bibles in English. Gal is primarily a heap of stones or waves. Heaps or waves, many times it's translated. Gala is to reveal. Gilgal is a wheel. Galut is translated as exile or captivity, but actually it means to expose. We'll come back to this in a few minutes. And Travis, I want you to leave this up here for a while. Galach is the Hebrew word for shaving. Like when they shave Joseph's head or something. Or when someone, do not shave your head or something like that. It's galach. Why? Because it's talking about shaving around someone's head. A galil is a ring. Galal, we talked about that earlier. That literally means to roll something over. There's our word agol, which is to make a cycle. Megillah is a scroll or a roll or a book, which is also used in Ezekiel chapter 2, which we'll get to a little bit later. Gil is the Hebrew word for to rejoice. Goel, from the root Gaal, means to redeem. Some of you are probably familiar with the kinsman redeemer. That is a Goel in Hebrew. And the last word I have there is egel, or a calf. Now leave it up there, Travis. Let's talk about these words a minute. A heap of stones. As a matter of fact, also, I believe it's gilu. The word's slipping my mind now. One of the Hebrew words for idols is also made up of a G and an L. Pardon me, I can't remember what the exact word it is right now. But the reason why it's translated as an idol or as a stone or as an idol in your Bible is because many of the idols were stones or round logs. Round logs or stones are also one of the Hebrew words, or one of the words that's translated in your English as idol. Now, gal is pretty simple, a heap of stones, a pile of round stones. And waves, obviously when the water is coming in on the shore of the ocean, it rolls in. We talk about the waves rolling into the shore. Now, galah is the Hebrew word for to reveal something. Now, remember we talked about when you take the stone and you roll it over, you've revealed what was previously concealed. You had to roll something over in order to reveal something. That's because that's how things get revealed. It has something to do with these cycles. Gilgal is actually translated as a wheel in your Bible. It's also Galgal. It's also translated that way. But I wanted to stop a minute and talk about this word galutz. Galutz. As a matter of fact, Travis, come on back to me just for a minute. Galutz. And then we'll come back to it in just a second. The name of the book of the Revelation in Hebrew is Heth Galutz. As a matter of fact, if you go to the bookstore here at GLC, and I have recommended this to a lot of people over the last couple years, as a matter of fact, probably 5 or 6 years now, that when I do conferences and seminars, I always try to mention the fact that if there's anybody out there that would like to have their New Testament in Hebrew, they would like to see their New Testament in Hebrew. Now, there's lots of different New Testaments out there in Hebrew. But one of the ones I recommend is by Thomas Nelson Publishers, and happens to be here at the GLC bookstore. And generally what I do is I just give people the address, the email, or not the email address, but the website address of GLC. And I'll tell them, go to God's Learning Channel, and then go to the bookstore, and then click on the books, and then scroll down to the Complete Hebrew English Bible. It's a hardcover one. I'm assuming it's okay that I do this advertising here. And what they have available there is the New Testament with the English on the left and the Hebrew on the right. And so you can see it in both Hebrew and English. Now, if you go to the book of the Revelation, if you scroll through it and scroll through it, pun intended, I guess, go back to the end, the very first word you will see in Hebrew in that book is Heth Galut, the revelation of Yeshua the Messiah. Now, it's translated as revelation there, but actually Galut is the Hebrew word translated as the captives or in captivity. Now, when you read your Tanakh, when you read your Old Testament, especially when you get to the writings and the prophets, even though they were already prophesied these things in the Torah already prophesied that Moses said, after my departing, he says, I already know, and we're going to talk about this verse just a little bit later as well. He says, I already know that you're going to depart from my ways. I already know that there's going to be a whole bunch of people that come forth from your loins as you're scattered throughout all the world. I already know this is going to happen, and I already know that you're going to mix with all the other religious systems in the world. God's smarter than we are. He already knew that, and so he reveals it through Moses. He says, I already know you're going to shachat, or corrupt yourselves in this world. And so since I already know that you're going to do that, you're going to go into captivity. Generally speaking, the punishment for disobedience, especially God's people in general in the Bible, is really not off with their heads. No, it's actually exile. Kind of like a father would do. As a matter of fact, when Adam and Eve did what they did in the garden, he didn't ground them for 3 days or put them in time out and so forth, or string them up or something and put them on the stretching board or whatever. He exiled them. They were exiled out of the garden into the world in which there's thorns and thistles and the grass of the field. And so in other words, comparing it to a garden, it was like he's taken his precious roses and his precious tomatoes and fruit, and he's cast them out into a dry, dusty field where they have to compete with the weeds and the tares and the thistles and the thorns for all the water and all the sunshine and nutrition from the earth. They got to compete with them now. Where if they'd just listened to him, then they would have stayed in the garden, and he would have taken care of them like a cultivated tree. He would have watched over them, and he would have pruned them and taken care of them. But no, they had to turn away from the one commandment that he did give them, and they find themselves exiled out there. And so that is going to be the pattern. of what's going to happen to the Father's people generation after generation after generation throughout the Scriptures. The Father's dealing with the same thing. That's why you have this beautiful panoramic view of what I just described to you in the parable of the prodigal son. Because that's what the prodigal son does. It's a one-time shot, if you will, in that parable of what every generation is going to do. All of us are stiff-necked. It's a shame that we would just look at the Jews and go, oh, what a stiff-necked people. We're all stiff-necked people. We're all in that same condition. And so the Father's always trying to woo us all back into His home, into His house. And He does this same teaching through every generation. So He says, you will go into captivity. So generally the punishment for straying away from Him is He ends up sending our own enemies against us. Read very carefully the prophets, and you'll see that it's the Father that sent the Assyrians. It's the Father that sent them against them. It's the God from the east, if you will, that sent this wind coming forth, this east wind against them. Why? Because the Word already said that if you obey me, I will bless you. And if you don't, I will curse you. So that ain't hard to figure out. That's not rocket science. And so that's the way it's been for every generation. And so they're in captivity, meaning from a field's point of view, because that's what we're talking about here is agricultural terms. From the position of a field, or the world, because the Bible says that the field is the world when Yeshua tells the parable. So in other words, what he's saying is, you want to know what's going on in the world? If you understand what's going on in a field, you understand what's going on in the world. And so these generations that are stiff-necked, that turn themselves away from the Father, He exiles them and places them into captivity. And that word in Hebrew is galut. But actually, from an agricultural point of view, it means to be exposed to something. It's like something that was cultivated and taken care of, but since it rejected its cultivator, it's now exposed out there into the field along with everyone else. And so that's actually what galut means. And so the book of the Revelation, I said all that to say this, the book of the Revelation is not so much revealing something as it is the gathering of the exiles. The whole book is about, because it's the revelation of Yeshua the Messiah. Technically, the book of Revelation is really not the revelation of the beast. It's not the revelation of the Antichrist. It's not the revelation of the bad guy. It's the gathering. It's the revelation of Yeshua the Messiah, who has a body. See, Yeshua has a body. He is the head. We are the body. And His body is what? Scattered throughout all the earth. And so the book of Revelation is all about the details of the regathering of all His exiles who have been exposed out there throughout all the world, and how He's going to bring them all back into the kingdom. And so, hit galut is the Hebrew meaning of that word, even though we translated apocalypsis and so forth in the Greek and into the English as the revelation. Now, let's bring our screen back up again here, Travis. Get back to some of these words again. Once again, we talked about the fact that galach means to shave around someone's head. And so something being round would have something to do with that. Galil is a ring. We all understand that our wedding rings are round. Galal means to roll something over. Let me go over and take that nasty thing off the screen. Our goal is our word here that we're going to come back to in a few minutes. It's translated as a cycle. As a matter of fact, before we do, come on back to me. Let's talk about our goal. Let's get back to our goal here for a minute, because that's going to be the basis of our whole teaching here of Ezekiel's wheel. Our goal means to make a cycle. Once again, not just to make a cycle, but to make it enough times that you actually wear a little rut in the ground. Now, I want to once again give you an ancient picture of this word. Well, as a matter of fact, I changed my mind. Now, I'll do this when I get to calf. See, the very last word on our list is a calf. It'll probably be much easier to describe it as a calf. Bring the screen back up, Travis. Okay? All right, let's go back to this. Agol means a cycle. Megillah is a roll or a book. Why? Because scrolls back then, you rolled them in and you rolled them back out. That's how they operated. Now, Gil, G-I-Y-L, is the Hebrew word translated to rejoice. Now, here's one you might have to think about for a moment. Because you might think, so what in the world does this cycle and so forth, or this wheel or going around, have to do with to rejoice? Now, this is not the only Hebrew word that's translated as rejoice. It's just one of those. The reason why is because the concept of gil in Hebrew means, it's translated as rejoice, but literally it means to leap up in the air and to spin around. To literally leap up, jump up in the air and spin around. So when Yeshua is with his disciples in the book of Luke, and he says he's rejoicing with his disciples. Come on back to me a minute, Travis. Come on back to me. It doesn't mean this. This is not rejoicing in Hebrew. I'm praising God in my heart. That's not rejoicing in Hebrew. Okay, Yeshua didn't stand there with his disciples and go, I'm praising in my heart. He was literally moving, jumping up, and spinning around, because that's the reason why that it is involved with that word, is it goes round and round and round. And so also we have the concept of a goel, from the root gaal, a redeemer. Goel, redeemer. Why? Well, because redeem means to bring something back around to the way it started, to bring it back around. When you turn something in, when you redeem something in, you return it back. That's the idea of a cycle. That's the idea of what I'm trying to say with these wheels, and the fact that we have been trained in our Western culture to think of time and history, especially in our Bible, as a line, as a linear thought process, a path that we're traveling down, a goal that we're heading for. When actually the teaching of Hebrew comes in cycles. He's teaching the same generation the same truth. Now, there will be one day a final cycle. And that's what we're going to get to when we get to actually drawing Ezekiel's wheel. Yes, I am going to draw it as best as I can, okay, very crudely. There's a point to it. At the end, is there will be a final cycle. But up until that final cycle, that 7,000 years, there is a plan for man on earth. Today it's 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day. And so there is a 7,000-year plan, cycle for man. And the way it began in the beginning, when the cycle is complete, that's the way it will be in the end. And we've mentioned this several times, and we'll mention it again when we get to the end of the series, about how things started in the beginning, and how when you get to the book of Revelation, you see basically the same thing going on when you get to the end as well. So they'll make a cycles. And so that's why in Hebrew, the concept of a goel, or gaal, a redeemer, is to bring things back around to the way they were. Now, let's take the time to do this word, calf, egel. Now, the logical person would ask, well, what in the world would a calf have to do with this? Well, now's when I want to paint the picture for you that I said I would do a while ago. Let's go back thousands of years ago, even though it's still done today. Thousands of years ago, they would take a large threshing wheel that you would thresh with. That's what a threshing wheel was all about. And they would tie a calf or a bull to this threshing wheel. And that calf and the bull would turn that threshing wheel around like this. And sometimes they would hook up 3 or 4 of them to this threshing wheel, and when they go around in a circle like that. And after a while, some say that usually on about the 3rd day after you've done that, you don't have to tie the calf to the threshing wheel anymore. It just goes right to it. In other words, it's so accustomed to doing this cycle. And that's the point, I'm going to suggest you, of returning to his cycles, is when you do them consistently. Not only do you wear a little rut in the ground, so you stay in it, and it's natural, it becomes a natural thing to do, but the calf didn't need to be yoked to it anymore. The calf automatically went to the threshing floor or threshing wheel and moved that thing around in a circle. Now, years ago, I saw a movie in which, it was a period piece about 1,000 years ago, in which these people came into this village, and they captured all the adults, or excuse me, they killed all the adults, and they took the little kids and they took them back to their camp. And they took the calves off the threshing wheel, and they tied these kids to the threshing wheel. And the kids, they were just these little teenagers, they were pushing this wheel around, And you'll notice in the movie, as you look down at their feet, after a couple of scenes, you can see a little rut in the ground as these kids push this threshing wheel around. Now, the next scene is teenagers pushing this wheel around. And then the scene after that is young adult pushing it around. And the last scene is Arnold Schwarzenegger, Conan the Barbarian, pushing this wheel around in a circle like this, which is probably where he got the phrase, "I'll be back." But I could have made that part up. But nonetheless, that is the picture that you see of him pushing this threshing wheel around. Now, the Father already knew that that's what a calf does, or that's what calves were designed to do. He already knew they did that. And so that's why that's the same word in Hebrew, this idea of egel, translated as a calf. Now, you might notice that when the children of Israel are given the Torah on the mountaintop, by the time they get down quickly, as a matter of fact, Moses says, "Quickly you will corrupt yourselves and turn away from me." That's the nature and pattern and paradigm of every generation. Quickly you turn from me. And by the time you get down to the bottom of the mountain, what have they done? It says that they have corrupted themselves in Exodus chapter 32. And they have, as a matter of fact, there, put it up on the screen real quick if we got just a minute here left of this show. Put it up there. Shemot 32, 7 and 8 says, Yahweh said unto Moses, "Go get you down, for your people, which you brought out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves, turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded you, and have made themselves a molten calf." Now come on back to me. They made themselves so quickly, they've established their own cycles. That's what it's trying to teach us there by using the word for calf, egel. They already established their own way by worshiping God the way the Egyptians worshiped their God, which of course is with a calf. And so there's a direct association with corrupting yourselves along with this calf worship, or doing something in cycles. Now, I'm going to submit to you that probably many of us in here have just been in our own ruts. Because remember, if you do something long enough in this word, agol, that you wear a little rut in the ground, a little track in the ground. And so many of us have just found ourselves in our own little ruts. But I'm submitting to you that what the Father wants to do for us and through us today is to, and sometimes it's hard to get out of a rut, you know that. But to get out of that thing and get established in His paths, in His, not His paths, but His cycles of righteousness, and restore His ways back into our culture. We'll continue with Ezekiel's next wheel next time, but in the meantime, cling to your roots that your days may be long and that you will prosper in everything that you set your hand to do. That's what we want for you. Once again, completeness to you. Shalom Aleichem.